Hey guys, just wanted to make a quick video. Uh, I'm always thinking about cars, so one topic that I often find myself pondering is cars that meet like certain criteria, and mainly in terms of restoration. More of like the older cars, because I'm into older cars. So there's definitely different categories of cars that you can buy, and that are rare and probably will go up in value. Some will, require a lot of work. Others won't. Finding parts for some will be difficult. The restoration process could be much more difficult than some others. But for this video, I think this is one that I love to ponder the most, because it's a topic where the cars that you can buy, you basically won't lose any money. So it's kind of one of those things, the old adage of when people say, oh, if you buy a car and you modify it, you're going to lose money. You're going to get maybe 20% of the money that you put into the car, which is, probably true for, a certain select, group of cars, newer particularly. But the cars that I'm thinking about are the ones that the work that you put into it, particularly restoring it to, like OEM status, you'll likely break even, or, maybe even make money. The cars that I thought about are cars that are definitely in abundance. So, most people that watch this video won't have too difficult of a time to find and purchase, and even just find parts for them. So there's definitely more cars that aren't on this list that are definitely a viable option. Probably might require a little bit more work, maybe a little bit more risky. But these are 5 cars that, off the top of my head, I would say are cars that have the most likelihood of you breaking even on your purchase. And when I say the purchase, I mean, you buy the car. Let's just say you buy the car for $5,000, and the car needs about $5,000 worth of work. You put in that $5,000 worth of work, and you realistically can expect to sell that car for at least $10,000. That's kind of the focus on this video. So with that said, these are the cars that I would say fit that bill. The first one that comes to my mind that's definitely already seeing appreciation is the C4 Corvette. The C4 Corvette spanned a lot of years. It spanned, 13 years? 1984 to 1996. So during that run, there's obviously, there was a lot of changes. The earlier years, 84 to like 87, definitely more of the less desirable cars. 84 definitely, particularly. It's kind of a unique car of its own. Funny thing about it, when I was researching it, that some of the body parts, even though they look like the later models, they actually don't fit on like 85 and newer. So, but with that said, one thing that I can say about the C4 Corvette is interior is horrible. The build quality is definitely, lacking. I own one. I own a 1994 C4 Corvette with the 6-speed. It's polo green. I'll make a video on that. But it was definitely more fun than I expected it to be. But also, the build quality, I remember back in the 90s, people were saying how horrible they were. They're pretty bad. So when you're looking for a C4 Corvette, there's definitely a lot of them out there, but the one problem that you'll run into is finding one that was actually taken care of. A lot of these cars I'm noticing have been, they've been neglected. The OptiSpark was definitely one issue. They kind of remedied that later down the road, but the one common problem that I noticed with them is that they often don't. They have a starting problem. There's that's the anti-theft system. Yeah, I don't want to get too much into it, but the point that I'm trying to make is for the C4 Corvette, there's definitely desirable years for that car that I think you could buy it, you could fix many of the interior and exterior pieces that need replacement, and you could realistically you'll at least break even. And so the cars that I would say fit the bill for that, with a high probability, would be definitely the 6-speeds. The 6-speed started in 1989, if I remember correctly. Before that they had the Doug Nash 4+3. Kind of a neat idea, but in reality, it wasn't. The 6-speed was better. So in that regards, finding a manual transmission is ideal. And you want to get the later years. So there was the later years, 1992 and newer, came with the LT1, the LT4, which was only available in 1996 with a 6-speed, and then the LT5 engine, which came in the ZR1, 1990 to 1995. I don't think it had a 96. And the ZR1 engine was the 32 valve Yamaha engine. It's kind of neat in some regards, but it's a real maintenance hog. Another thing about that engine is getting parts for it is getting more and more difficult. So yes, technically, is it the better engine? Yeah, but I would say, the LT4 engine is definitely underrated. They actually underrated it from the factory. They rated it as 330 horsepower. It was more like 360 horsepower. They didn't want to rate it at 360 because it was actually putting out more power than the LS1. A little cool fun fact about that engine. The engine was very, very neat engine. So you could realistically modify the LT4 engine and basically get a ZR1 engine, LT5 engine, and it be fairly easy to what is it? Oh man, there's a police officer here. When someone pulled over. So yeah, you could realistically build that engine up to be, equivalent to an LT5 ZR1 engine. Get the same power out of it. I mean, particularly nowadays, 5.7 liters is kind of a dinosaur now. People are doing the 383 strokers, very often. So that's definitely, a neat thing. So back in regards to that, the C4. So honestly, like a 1992. It got the newer interior. 1991 actually is a interesting year. It had the newer interior, the newer dash, but it still had the L98 engine. I actually like the L98 engine. Didn't put out as much horsepower, but I think it had a lot of potential. But 1992, it had obviously the updated engine, the LT1 engine. It had the more square tail lights, the more traditional one that you see, and you can get it in the 6-speed. So, me personally, I would say go for a 1996 6-speed LT4 Corvette. There's ones that are obviously much more desirable. They're pretty much out of reach now. The 1996 Grand Sports, those were limited production. Only came in that Admiral Blue. But so the ones that I would say are desirable are 1992 to 1996. Definitely some unique colors. I would say silver. Silver is going to be a common theme for a lot of these cars that I would say are going to be the less desirable, probably the least likelihood that it's going to go up in value. 1996 actually had an anniversary edition, a collector's edition. I'm a big fan of collectors, limited production, but unfortunately the C4 Corvette actually came in silver for the collector edition. I'm just definitely not a fan of that. And I honestly, I don't know how likely those will become valuable. I mean, we'll see. But yeah, so I would say definitely getting some like unique colors They had a 1993 40th anniversary edition. It had a 40th anniversary option. You could get them in basically all colors, but it often came in that ruby red, like a purplish color. I like it. So I would say like the 1993 is definitely a good one. The anniversary edition, really not much special about that car other than it had some, badging and special embroidering on the seats. Nothing too crazy as far as unique items to that model, that trim level. So yeah. So in a nutshell, I would say unique colors. 6-speed, definitely. Obviously, you want lower mileage. I think that car, is going to be one that you can basically buy it, fix it up, enjoy it for many years, and be able to sell it for at least what you paid for it. So that's in regards to that Corvette. It'll be a little difficult because it's hard to find a good Corvette. Actually, I found a good one. I got a great deal on it. My car only now, I bought it with 46,000 miles on it. It has 52,000 miles on it now. I've owned it for about 6 years, so I know I could pretty much sell it for double what I paid. But okay, so next car that I would say, unfortunately they're already going up in value, but I still think that there's still room for you to buy one and at least break even, would be the Z32 300ZX twin turbo. That one ran in the United States from 1990 until 1996. I would say the desirable ones are probably the later years. Definitely maybe 1993 to 1996. Really about that year production run, it actually didn't change too much. I would say the main changes were the airbags. Most of them had adjustable sport suspension. So I would say that as far as 300ZXs, there's not too much that differentiate them. It's not like one year came with more horsepower or anything like that. They were pretty much all the same. So I would say same thing. I would say probably a yellow one would be the most desirable, but obviously like black, white. But again, I think silver would be probably the least desirable color. But yeah, unfortunately, finding those in good condition is a little difficult. One of the main reasons for that, that car hitting rock bottom. I don't know if any of you followed I've been following 300ZXs. I'm somewhat of a Nissan fan. I got a 240SX 89 hatchback, bought in 2004. Built it up a little. I'll make a video on that one too. But the 300ZX, the problem is that the maintenance was definitely difficult. It's not much of a DIY car in that it's not to say that it's hard to work on, because of the technology or anything. The main problem is the engine bay is just stuffed with that VG engine. It's the 3-liter V6, 283 horsepower. No, I'm sorry. 300 horsepower and 282 foot-pounds of torque. Pretty cool for what it was. That engine was obviously just unique to the 300ZX, even though they were making the RB engines for the GTR or the Skylines. But yeah, so honestly, the main difficulty that you will have, those cars have been neglected. When I was looking, honestly, back from like the mid 2000s up until like 2015, the prices were very low, and I think the main reason is because the cars were just they were so difficult to work on, and if you needed to really do much work on it, it's going to obviously cost you a lot of money. So a lot of these cars sat. So it could, you can still get some at a decent price, but one thing is that it's probably going to cost you a decent amount to restore it. I personally, I'm a big fan of pulling engines out of the car anyway, particularly for these older cars. But the Z32 300ZX is one particular car that I would say your best bet really is to pull the engine out and go over everything. The turbos are definitely, the turbo seals are definitely something that you want to replace, and just the preventative maintenance as well as the regular maintenance. You know, not much. The hike is not a big problem. Really not. I can't really say too much. In regards to that car having major problems as far as like making it too expensive and not worthwhile to restore. They definitely are, but just be prepared. To find a good one, a low mileage one. Now the time has already passed. I still think you can buy a low mileage one, a good example, and you won't lose your money on it. But I think the more realistic for the people watching would be the ones that need some work. I would say probably your biggest problem is getting the interior restored. The leather, most of them came with leather interior. You could get them in cloth. I think the cloth is much more rare. So expect to see that the leather interior didn't hold up very well. So restoring things like that could cost you, it could cost you time trying to find a good set of seats, or it's going to cost you to get them restored from an upholstery shop. So yeah, as I said, nothing too crazy about that car. Just expect that it's probably going to need a lot of maintenance. So you're probably going to have to go through somewhat of a pretty major, process as far as like pulling the engine out and things like that. So then the next car that I would say is sticking with the Nissan family. I would say the 350Z and the 370Z. Let's just stick with maybe the 350Z right now because it's obviously cheaper. I think the 350Z is a good car. The one problem with it is the engine. The VQ35DE engines. That's the 2003 up to 2006. Those are the non-HR that only came in 2007 and 2008. So those engines were prone to problems from the factory. One major issue that they had was they consumed a lot of oil from the factory. That was a major problem. They actually had recalls on. They had a lawsuit against them. So if you haven't had one if you're looking, more than likely, you're going to find a lot that they're going to tell you either it's consuming a lot of oil or the engine's blown. I think that's probably one of the most common cars I can find that has a blown engine or needs major engine work. So in my opinion, I actually would love to get a 350Z one day. I'm probably going to stick with the 2007, 2008. I think that's the better buy. But I can say that if you're looking for the 2003 to 2006, I would say go into it expecting to do a proper full engine rebuild, which in my opinion is not horrible, but I like it because a lot of these cars are just so old. They're beat up. It doesn't hurt to do that. In the long run, I personally think it's cheaper. So just that's one major thing to look out for is that, and also remember that the 350Z took the place of the 240SX as far as drift cars. Once the 240SXs started going up in value and the value of the 350Z started coming down, obviously a lot of people switched to that because it came with a V6, at least 283 horsepower. 282 horsepower, and then it went up to I think like 315, 320 horsepower with the HR engines. But yeah, great. It was definitely a great choice for the money. I can see why a lot of people use them for drift cars. So other than that, I think the 350Z is a great car. As funny as that sounds, it has engine problems, but they're so old, it's probably best to properly rebuild the engine. The 370Z, it has the VQ37, so it's a 3.7 liter version of it. They do still have some issues with that engine, but not nearly as bad as the VQ35DEs. But yeah, I will say the prices for the 370Zs are pretty attractive in my opinion. You can get some. I've seen them as low as like $9,000. Of course, they're going to need work, but you're looking between 9 and 12. You can get into one of them. It just depends on how much work it's going to need. So yeah, I think that those cars will be looked after fondly as the time goes on. It's definitely a unique car. It definitely has a unique engine sound. It sounds like a trumpet. So the next car I would say is a car that I own. I actually bought it when the prices were rock bottom. I bought it in 2016. I bought mine for $1,500. It's the BMW E46, the 2003 to 2006 ZHP. But when I say ZHP, I'm particularly talking about, I think the ones that are going to be the most desirable are the sedan 6-speeds. I think that will be the ones that are most sought after. And then in terms of color, I would say it's going to be white, or it's Alpine white, or not Milano. I'm sorry. Man, I can't remember what the red is. I can't remember what the red is called. It's not Hellrot. Imola red. Imola red will be those two colors. I think would be the most desirable. So and the cheaper one from the factory was actually the one that came with the Alcantara interior. So you could actually get ZHPs with leather, which was an option, or you could get them with the Alcantara. The Alcantara ended up being the less desirable. So when you got the Alcantara, it actually came with an Alcantara steering wheel too. And I'm sure some of you know, watching, Alcantara didn't hold up very well to daily driving and things like that. I have Alcantara in my I have a 2004 black Schwartz black sedan 6-speed. It has the Alcantara, and the previous owner didn't take care of it, so it's a little rough. I personally still like the Alcantara, but I would have liked it if I had a leather steering wheel, and if I had a garage. I think the interior would have held up much better if the cars held up in the garage. But yeah, so that's it. I mean, there's nothing too particular about the ZHP that I would say has more issues than the regular E46s, the 330s. So just some particular differences that might cost a little bit more to restore the cars, the ZHPs, is the front suspension is definitely, it's a little more expensive. So the ZHP control arms particularly had beefier ball joints. So the lower control arms are technically different. They're considered an upgrade for non-E46s, but they obviously fit on the other E46s as well. But yeah, so so the maintenance, honestly, it's going to be pretty much spot on with the regular E46 330s. The common issues with that with the E46 is the Vanos. The Vanos is definitely a problem area, and I have a video on that. I won't go too much into it, but you need to get it rebuilt. You need to get a rebuilt unit, or rebuild it yourself with the proper Vanos seals. And you can actually buy those seals. You can buy the seals separately from Dr. Vanos, or from I think there's a company called Bison. They're upgraded. You do not want to buy a rebuilt unit from BMW. BMW does not put in the updated seals. But for more information on that, just check out my other video. I kind of go over all of that. The other issue, is the cooling system. It's all plastic. It's a horrible design. I'm a Honda guy, and when I changed my cooling system on my E46, I was shocked at how poorly the design is. There's so many plastic parts in it, so you do have to keep up on the maintenance. If you don't know the history of it, honestly, be prepared to replace everything: the radiator, the expansion tank, the hoses, the water pump. Make sure it's got the proper water pump with a metal impeller. The stock ones, they might have changed it now, but the common issue was the factory units came with a plastic composite impeller that would often break. And then also the thermostat housing is another thing. It's made of all plastic, so you definitely have to change those things. So I would say honestly every 7 years. I personally wouldn't go more than 75,000 miles on the cooling system before you replace it, and just be prepared. It is expensive. If you do it yourself, it's still expensive. If you pay someone to do it, it's even more expensive. I'm not up to date on the prices, but honestly, I would guesstimate the price for the parts alone are going to be $900 to $1,000, $1,100 to get all the parts that you need for the repair. So it was Vanos and cooling system, and the next thing I would say is definitely bushings. The suspension bushings, particularly in the back, you definitely want to look out for to see the rear trailing arm bushings are the most common to fail. But honestly, I'm at this point the rear subframe bushings and the control arms bushings need to be replaced. So plan on that. It's a pretty thorough job. It's going to require presses and things like that. So it's not easy, but one thing that's nice is that once you do it, it's done, and it will make your car worth more money, more desirable. And then the other thing is the rear subframe. That'll allow you to actually check out the rear subframe. You can actually reinforce it. I think the cars that will have had the reinforcement, or at least checked, I would say the reinforcement plates welded in, those are the cars that are going to be even more desirable. The E46 is definitely a car that the more maintenance you do on it, the more desirable it's going to be. I think people already still look fondly back on the E46, particularly the E46 M3. But I think that the E46 non-M3, the 330s and the ZHPs are definitely, I think they're still a good car that people still will be interested in. So like I said, that's definitely the maintenance that you do on it, I think will pay for itself. You will definitely be at the top of the list for people looking for these cars. And those are the main things for the E46. The next car that I would say is definitely a car that's been at a soft spot in my heart since I was a teenager, is the Acura Integra. And no, I'm not going to talk about the Type R, even though I love that car. I'm talking about the non-Type Rs, the 1994 to 2001. But the ones that I think are going to be the most desirable are I think it was only available. So these are going to be particular colors, but the GSR I think is going to be. It already is. They're already starting to go up in value already. I would say the GSRs definitely, but when it comes to the GSRs, you definitely want to look for two particular colors. One is called Supersonic Blue, and the other one's a purple. And those were only available for, I think, 1 or 2 years. I think Supersonic Blue was only available for 2 years. I want to say 98, 99. And the purple, I know, was available in 96. But I can't remember if there's another year. I think there might be another year. It's something I used to know. I can't remember. And also to be mindful of is that, for the most part, the Integras from 94 to 2001 were very similar, but one major facelift happened in 1998. So the 1998 got the facelift on the rear bumper and the front bumper and the headlights. So technically the headlights are different, even though they look the same, but because of the bumper's different, they are different. But other than that, I mean, other than like wheel choices, the car would basically stay the same. Another difference is that I just remembered is you had an electronic rear hatch release with the newer models. I want to say that happened in 98 as well. But the prior to that did not have it, and that's unfortunate. It is one common issue with that model, is that there's a plastic gear in there that breaks that you will need to fix. There's a fix. It's a DIY, just a little annoying to do, but there is a fix to fix that. Honestly, funny thing about that car, I mean, it basically is the epitome of Honda reliability. I can honestly say there's not much that goes wrong with that car. It's just general maintenance. There's nothing. It revs to the red lines at 8,200 RPM, and it's common that people beat them up and they just keep going. So yeah, for the most part, I mean the Integra is definitely a great car to buy. It comes with 170 horsepower, 1.8 liter, and it's definitely a fun little car. I mean, is it going to blow doors off of cars? No, but it's definitely a fun car. I will say it's the design was perfect for the track. You can have a lot of fun with. But like I said, I would say those two particular colors, the purple and the supersonic blue, and then I would say white is probably the next, maybe like the third most desirable, and then maybe red. There's no other colors that really stand out to me. So that's basically it. I mean, I think that these are cars. I think if you're a guy who, you know, likes to work on cars, I would say that these are definitely 5 cars worth looking into. You know, even just for nothing, for the goal of buying a car, wrenching on it, experiencing it for a little bit, and then selling it and basically getting your money back. You get a free car. And I've done that several times. I don't own any used car that has ever gone down in value. Every used car I bought has gone up in value. So yeah, if you guys have any other ideas, I mean, there's definitely cars that I would say like MR2, the 1990s, early 90s MR2, a few other cars. But I would say that those aren't as readily available. So I'm thinking more in terms of like readily available cars. But if you guys have ideas of cars that aren't as readily available but still a good, like I would say maybe like a Galant GR4 might be a car that, you know, fits the bill of you won't lose any money on it, but are there many out there? No, you won't find too many of those. So just a good conversational piece. So if you guys have any ideas or any opinions or suggestions on other cars, I'd love to hear them for other people too. All right, bye.